What's up, everybody? This is your host, Julian, and you're listening to the Step Aside Podcast. Today's guest is the main songwriter, lead singer, and face of an outstanding industrial dream pop band I just discovered on Bandcamp. Please welcome, out of Queens, New York, United States of America, Daniel Manning of Reduction Plan. Dan, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, man. What's up?
Man, what's up? I'm so glad you're on my show. Thank you for taking the time. I'm just appreciating.
Yeah, of course.
Dude, as most of the bands I'm trying to get on my show, you guys just popped up in my music feed on Bandcamp one day, and I'm glad you did, because you guys are really good, man, and very unique in my opinion.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, no, I was curious to ask how, so it just like showed up on Bandcamp? It just like appeared?
Yeah, on my music feed. So
very cool.
It's like, I'm a real fan of smaller, like independent bands, like there are a lot of good bands out there, So, and nobody knows them. I mean, you're the best sample, like you're just one of those artists, man. And
thanks.
I'm just curious, if I'm not mistaken, if I did my homework well, it all started with only you being like a one-man project, right? How did you guys become a band, and where and when did you meet the other two band members?
Yeah, so it started out just me as kind of like a way to kind of mess around with some ideas that I had that I didn't think would really work in like a proper band setting. I was just kind of messing around with that stuff, and then it got to a point where I was starting to play live, and I was just like, I was running back and forth, like looping a drum machine and then like playing a synth and then like looping my guitar. And it was just like too much going on. I was like, all right, I need like somebody to help me.
So we're just trying things out, right?
Yeah. And then, so I had my friend Ryan initially played with me. And it was just like the two of us, and we played a bunch of shows. He helped me out on like synth and guitar and stuff. And yeah, we did like a short tour together, just like the two of us, and yeah, played a bunch of shows. And then as the project sort of grew, there was more of a need for like a full band live sound. I was getting really frustrated with just like how we were sounding live. And I was like at a point with the project where I was like, okay, I think it's time to like bring it into like a band context live, just so it's more energetic and more fun and a little more dynamic.
I see.
Yeah. So then we had our friend John, who Ryan knew, come in on bass. That was like maybe 2 or so years ago. And then we were kind of like starting to play a little more. And both Ryan and John were kind of wanting to devote some time to their own musical like endeavors. So we took like a little bit of a break, and then my friend Louis, who I met through college, started playing with us on guitar. And then we've just kind of had a revolving cast of people in and out, but the band as it is now has been pretty much the same lineup for like about a year, I would say. Our friend Shane usually plays bass, or our friend Dave. And then actually on this recent string of shows, Shane has been playing synth like on every song for us, which is not something that we've done before, which has been like really cool. Definitely like fills out the sound way more having that, because like all the songs have synth on them. So having that like element live on everything definitely like takes a bit of stress off of everyone else, I think. Well, because when it was just the three of us, there was like this, like Louis would kind of jump back and forth between synth and guitar, and at least personally, I felt like a little anxious about needing to fill up the space live. like because there was just the three of us, like just guitar, bass, and like occasionally synth in and out. Um,
Yeah, sure.
and so having somebody else on synth all the time with every song kind of really helped to like, I don't know, make things sound more full and kind of like fill up the space more so that the rest of us can kind of relax and kind of come in and out as we need to.
So has it been the plan right in the beginning to be like a band one day? So was that the idea behind it right away?
Um, I don't know, not really, because I started writing songs like for Reduction Plan after kind of being burnt out on being in bands.
Okay.
Um, I was just like being really selfish.
Yeah,
And I
I
was
know.
like, I just,
I mean, being in a
I just
band
want
is
like,
is a hard job sometimes. I know the struggle.
yeah,
I know.
yeah, no, totally. And I think like I definitely enjoyed sort of like the collaborative process of like writing songs as a band. But I had like reached a point where I was like feeling really uh antsy creatively and really just wanted to like dive deep into something totally on my own. Um, so it started like with the intent of like specifically not being a band. And like some of the earlier like records and stuff, I was doing a lot more like ambient stuff and a lot more like looping sort of synth stuff and like a little bit of like improvisational guitar stuff over some of the songs. And
Yeah.
so like they were just things that I wanted to experiment with that I didn't think that I would be able to do within like the context of a band. Um, but yeah, as it's kind of grown, we've definitely become more. We definitely sound like a band now, I think.
I mean, I gotta say, you guys sound, in my opinion, you guys sound very unique compared to the to the lame average Joe nowadays standard Despacito Justin Bieber bullshit that is everywhere. Like if it's on the fucking TV, on the radio, Facebook videos, memes, vines, Twitter, Instagram, commercials, blah blah, name it. It's fucking everywhere.
Hmm.
So I really
Yeah.
love your style, man. It's straight back to the 80s, giving me that melancholic, sitting in my room listening to bands like Depeche Mode kind of feeling. So what I want to
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
is how did you, because you started it, how did you come up with your sound that is Reduction Plan known for today?
Yeah. Man. So it started. I think when I started it, I was pulling from a little bit more experimental places in a way. I was like super into this artist Dirty Beaches, and like really into like Swans and this other band Merchandise, who I think Merchandise are a band that has like stayed kind of like a pretty consistent touchstone for us as we've like grown. Um, and I think
Yeah.
like
So you grew up with it, like,
yeah, sort of. I definitely got into like Joy Division and the Smiths and stuff like that in high school, and then like started diving deeper into that like kind of like darker, like gloomier, like 80s sounding stuff. As I like yeah, as I got a little older. But it's weird. It was like I started it with the intention of just sounding dark in whatever sense of the word, and then as I kind of started developing it more, like just the use of like the synth and the drum machine and stuff sort of really lended itself to creating that kind of like 80s influenced sound. Um and so I don't think I had like a I'd been listening to that music like consistently, but I hadn't really figured out how to pull that influence into what I was doing, because I don't think I had like a very good understanding of my equipment or like how to make those sounds. So as I kind of got a little more comfortable doing that, I started like actively incorporating more of those elements into what we were doing. Because that's, yeah, it's definitely like my favorite kind of music, and definitely the music that I want to be playing.
So, what would you say are your biggest influences, like bands, that really like the way you're doing music nowadays?
Yeah, it's definitely changed a bit, especially like around this newer record. But like The Cure have always been like a massive, massive influence on everything I do, from like the guitars that I own to like the synths that I use and everything. That's always been like a very major touchstone. And like some of the, I don't think I don't think we're poppy enough for me to say that New Order are like a major influence. Maybe some of the like the darker stuff of New Order, but it's definitely like something that I'm like very keen on. But recently, I've like, or at least I think more so with like this newer record, I was way more influenced by a lot of heavier stuff, a lot more like industrial leaning stuff. Like Nine Inch Nails have always been like
Yeah, sure.
a
They're great.
huge, a huge, yeah, and just like yeah, a huge influence in terms of like the energy and sort of like what Trent does with production is absolutely insane. So like I guess like diving really deep into those records from like a technical standpoint, like really definitely had a big influence on the way that I approached like sort of making these like, I don't know, compositions and stuff, and then putting all these little pieces together. Um, but yeah, mostly like The Cure.
Yeah, man. As I was just speaking of average radio music nowadays, in my opinion, there are just a few very good bands and artists out there that are, like mainstream. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering, what are your favorite current artists that you're listening to on a regular basis? Like, what music do you enjoy besides your heroes from back in the good old days?
Um, oh, I'm obsessed with this band called Choir Boy, who are
Never heard of
on
them, to be honest.
oh man. Yeah, so they're on Deus Records, who do like a bunch of sort of like all kind of 80s influence stuff like Drab Majesty and all that kind of stuff. They're on Deus Records. So they do this like really sort of definitely very 80s influence, very Smiths talk sort of stuff. But it's got this very like sort of tender like kind of bedroom pop feel to it,
Yeah.
which I really love. Um, so they're really great. Also, the new Big Thief record, they're a really really excellent band. Um, Man, yeah, I don't know. A lot of the current bands that I like are bands that are influenced as well by a lot of like the similar kind of 80s sound. Um, so I guess yeah. Yeah, it all kind of comes back to this. I don't know. I've been like super into um a lot of like kind of heavier stuff as well recently. There's this band from Montreal called Big Brave, who are really great. They make like really heavy kind of drony metal, which I really love.
Sounds
Um,
good.
yeah, no, they rule. I saw them. There's this festival that happens in upstate New York called Basilica Soundscape, and they played as well as Lingua Ignota, who's another like really incredible artist right now. Both of them played and both just like absolutely blew me away. Um, just really like very intense and both very visceral and cathartic, which is something that I think I am definitely drawn to, especially with like heavier music for sure.
Sounds like you're getting like a lot of inspiration, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, just like seeing just the like sort of like raw emotion that they're able to like exercise in that way is really
Yeah.
really crazy to see.
I mean, if your Bandcamp discography isn't lying, you guys just put out like 7 releases in just 5 years. That's a shit ton of music, dude. How did you come up with such an insanely amount of songs and ideas, bro?
Well, when I started the project, I came into it with a bunch of kind of like unfinished songs that I had kind of written in the background of other bands that I had been in, just like kind of on the side of just like, oh, this is like an idea that I had, but it doesn't feel like it fits into, whatever band I'm in right now. So I'm just going to kind of sit on it. So that first record, especially, there's a lot of like ideas that I had for a few years. But then also, yeah, I was in college at the time and I just had a lot of free time. So I
So
just,
you've
yeah, and I
been one
lived,
of those students, right?
yeah. So yeah, and I lived in this house with a bunch of friends and we had this like massive basement. So I just like sprawled all my equipment out there and like I would just get home from class and just go down and mess around with stuff and just basically like I wanted to, at least in the beginning, I wanted to be prolific in the sense that I just like wanted to put out these little ideas or like these little experiments, even if they weren't like fully formed songs. I wanted to like include them on records, and just to kind of give like a, I don't know, just like a chronicling or like an archive of just like mostly just for myself, so I could track, I guess, in my mind, like different like ways of growing as like a artist or whatever, of like trying to experiment in different things and having sort of uh like a permanent log of that experimentation. Because I don't know, I mean, I could have like easily just like recorded them as voice memos on my phone or whatever, but then I would definitely have forgotten about them. And it was totally for me at the beginning. So I was just like, oh yeah, I mean, even if it's not like a fully formed song, I don't really care. I'm gonna put it out anyway. So yeah, but yeah, I've definitely my output has definitely slowed down since leaving college, and especially since moving to New York. It's definitely harder to like just sit down with all my gear
Uh,
and like mess around.
yeah, I see. Where you're from, mate? Like, did you grew up and such?
Yeah, so I grew up in Connecticut, in a small town called Bethel.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, which is like it's about I want to say like an hour and a half outside of New York City.
Yeah, for
Um,
American standards, that's just right around the corner.
yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, so I grew up there, and then went to college at the University of Connecticut, which is a little further, a little closer to Boston than New York. Um, and then yeah, I moved down here to New York a little over a year ago. Last July, I moved down.
Oh, okay. So if it comes up to songwriting, I'm wondering, is it still that you're doing the songwriting all by yourself? Or are you all working on the band's music together since you guys are a whole band now?
Um, I think so this new record was still mostly entirely written by me, just because the it kind of took a little longer to get out or to like have it released. So we were still in a place where I was the one mostly writing stuff. Although Louis plays guitar on one of the songs, which is really cool. It's the first time that he's been on record for us, which is really cool. And yeah, I think we're at a point where we like could start kind of collaborating more on ideas, and it was that way for some of the recording of this record. At least like Louis was kind of like a I don't know. I would just like bounce various ideas off of him, regardless. It wasn't like we were sitting down and writing together, but it was more just like I would send him something and be like, "Oh, what do you think?" And he'd be like, "Oh, I don't know if this like really works. Maybe you should like do whatever or whatever
Yeah, sure.
instead." So
So
I think
you
we're,
guys were like collecting ideas, but that's it, basically.
yeah, pretty much. I was just like I was sending him stuff, and we kind of just like would talk about it. but at the end of the day, I was still kind of like mostly writing and recording all of it on my own.
Are your band members cool with that? I mean, most of the a lot of musicians are on a pretty big like ego trip, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Well, I mean, it's cool. I think it's like pretty casual for them because they mostly just help me out with the live aspect of it, which is way more fun than like I think at least sitting in like a studio, So um yeah, it's just kind of worked out that way, and it keeps things like easier for them, and I can like kind of be the one who just like sits and tinkers with everything on my own, and kind of have that freedom to do that on my own time as well. Plus we're all kind of like spread out currently. Like two of us live in New York now. Louis lives in New York, and then Shane and Dave both live in Connecticut still. So yeah, it's just easier to just get together for the live presentation of it. But also, I mean, I haven't really sat down and written anything since this new batch of songs, so maybe that will change in the future. I don't know.
But I'm curious, like hand on heart, dude. Do you guys like everything you create? Like for me, I'm my biggest critic, right? And whenever I'm writing music myself, most of the time I will write like 10 songs, but just two songs of them would be good enough to be published for me. Plus, it takes me like forever to decide which one is like good enough. So, how about you guys? Do you really like everything you put out there like 100%?
I don't no, definitely not. I mean, some of the like earlier stuff, it definitely took me a little while to like only recently was I like comfortable with some of the earlier stuff we had put out. I kind of like felt like it wasn't my best work or wasn't just like really representative of what I thought the project should be. Um, like I don't like sitting on things for too long. I get really like anxious and antsy and want things to be like done and out. And I mean, maybe with some of the earlier stuff that kind of worked against me in a way, because I was so just like, oh, I just want to put it out. And then like a year or so later, I was just like, oh well, maybe this wasn't like my best like writing or whatever. But again, I mean, I think that it's important for that to exist as a sort of way to measure how far you've come as an artist or whatever. Having that like sort of, again, that back archive of like growth, I think is really important.
Yeah, I see. So, I mean, me personally, I really kind of like all of your stuff. I listen to all of it on Bandcamp, but I just love your latest release, which is called AE Met. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a met, but
A Met. Okay, it's nine
yeah,
tracks of pure inner autumn for me, though. Just could you tell us something about the songwriting process for that one?
yeah. Yeah, so that one I approached a little bit differently than I have any of the other records. A lot of the other records I recorded as sort of just like they were just the result of like sitting down and messing around with ideas and not really having any sort of like unified idea of what I wanted the record to sound like. I was just like, oh, cool. Well, I have like 8 songs now. I guess that's, that works for a record or whatever. This record especially, I was like, I had this idea in my head of what I wanted it to sound like. I had like specific ideas that I wanted to experiment with. So I think I definitely had a more concrete vision of what I wanted the record to be going into it.
Yeah.
Which was something that I hadn't really had before. So that was like super exciting for me, and it made me way more sort of like very much more driven and kind of determined to push myself, I guess, as a writer to really like to make sure that I reached that sort of vision of what I had for the project and for the record, and like where I wanted to take it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the songwriting process was way more intentional than it has been in the past. Cause like with previous records, I would mess around with my drum machine and I would like come up with a loop that I liked, and then I would just kind of leave it looping and um, just kind of noodle over it with my guitar until I found something that I thought worked, and then kind of take that idea to its like kind of logical conclusion. With this record, I sat down and I was like, okay, I want the drums to sound like this. I want the guitar to sound like this. I want there to be like this weird like bridge section or this weird like ending or this like noisy thing happening.
Yeah, so you figure it all out like in pre-production, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I like sat down and I knew sort of the pieces of the puzzle that I wanted to fit together. More so than anything I'd done in the past.
Man, I find your lyrics are like really dark. Like, would you give our audience a quick insight of what your songs are all about? Like, where do you get your inspiration from for your lyrics? I find them, like I said, very deep, and to me, they got like a melancholic, like depressive kind of vibe sometimes. So
Totally.
what's that all about?
Lyrically, it's just a way for me to get certain feelings out that I'm like not really able to express in kind of different contexts, outside of like a sort of like creative sphere. Um, and yeah, I think they're definitely melancholic. But I don't really think of myself as like a super melancholic person all the time. Definitely some of the time, depending on who you ask.
Doesn't
Um,
sound like it, to be honest. So
oh, good. I'm glad. But yeah, I don't know. I use sort of the music as a space to kind of exercise these feelings and tackle certain subjects that I don't really feel like I have a space to touch upon outside of that context. So yeah, I don't know. Lyrically, this record I think is a little heavier than some of the records in the past in terms of some of its like lyrical content. But I think it just comes from sort of the my like lived experience and trying to channel uh something that I don't have anywhere else to channel, I guess.
yeah, sounds great. Sounds deep as well. So when you're releasing like 7 releases in just 5 years, I was wondering, did you guys design all of your cover arts yourself as well, or who designed them? I think my favorite one, by the way, is that one of what's it called, Paradise from last
Oh
year, right?
yeah.
So who made it? Like,
It's been different each time. So our Bandcamp might be a little confusing because so Paradise was actually the first record that we ever put out,
oh
or
damn,
that at least that I ever put out, and it was definitely very scrappy recording. So I had my friend remaster it for us, with like a just like proper mastering software or whatever. Um, and I kind of re-released it because it had been out for I think like 3 or 4 years or something at that point. And I was like, okay, like this is something that I'm like comfortable with, again, so I'm gonna like give it like a proper release. So I had it mastered and we pressed tapes of it, and I kind of messed around with the original cover to make it a little different. So that cover is just like it's just a random photo, from this blog that I used to follow. And I reached out to the guy and I was like, "Hey, I really like this pic. Is it all right if I use it for an album cover?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure, go for it." And then I took that original photo and like ran it through this like kind of like glitch editor thing, which is how it ended up in that like weird kind of segmented black and white kind of like weird thing. Um, but yeah, I don't know. The album cover is, I think it's something that I've always, I think that's like super important. to have the visual representation of the record match sort of the sonic kind of like palette of the whole thing. So yeah, each album cover has come from a different place. The last two have been my friend Alan Huck has helped me out with. So the last record that we put out somewhere was a collage that he made. I think like clippings from like National Geographic or something.
Yeah.
That I thought was just like a really striking image, and I thought it was really cool. So yeah, I asked him if I could use it, and he helped me out with like some light design stuff to just like format it properly. And then he did the full layout and everything for this record, for the vinyl, like for the insert and everything, for the LP, for the front and back cover. He did everything for the cassette as well. And the photos for this most recent record are all of this. I like scrolling through public archives a lot, just because there's a lot of really strange things in there and strange like little snippets of history and stuff. So all the photos used for this most recent record are pulled from this like massive fire at like an like oil station from like the 70s.
Yeah.
And I just thought that the fire was really striking, and the whole
Like dark enough.
yeah exactly. But yeah, so yeah, all of the album art comes from a number of different places.
You guys just played a release show for a Met last weekend, right? So
Yeah.
how did it go? Where did you do it? Like what location and how big was the audience?
Yeah, so it was at a venue. So I live in Ridgewood, which is part of Queens, but it's really close to Brooklyn as well.
Okay.
And so there's this venue in Ridgewood called Trans Pecos, which is this kind of like, I don't know, pretty small room. I think the max capacity is like 200 people or whatever. But yeah, so I had a friend who kind of books there every so often, so I just hit him up and he was like, "Yeah, man, let's do it." And yeah, I got a lineup together with a bunch of really great friends who are all very talented, and it was really great to have all of them play. And yeah, it was super fun. I think like 75 or something people came, which was really cool. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun. We played a bunch of songs from the record that we hadn't played live before, which was a little bit nerve-wracking, but mostly good. Yeah, and it was cool. It was just really nice to have like all of our friends just in one place, and to get to play with like a bunch of really awesome people, to, you know, celebrate the release of the record. It was really cool.
I'm curious, are the American people, are they willing to spend money on like merchandise from smaller like independent bands like your band?
You know, I was actually joking with Louis about this the other day, that we don't really sell that much merch, which I don't know if that's because I don't really know. But no, I mean, I think like since pressing something to vinyl, I think people like having that to own. But I'm also really bad about bringing merch to shows. Sometimes I just like straight up forget it in my apartment. I'm just like, oh well, guess we just don't have any of it.
Holy shit.
Well, but up until recently, like now that we have like records and like we have new shirts and everything, and we have like the whole deal, I've been much better about it. But definitely, that was definitely something that I was not very good at in the past. But yeah, yeah.
What I just watched on like Bandcamp and all over the internet is that overseas it's becoming a trend that you would do your record on tape. You know, that's something you wouldn't see here in Europe. You know.
Oh, really?
It's,
Interesting.
yeah, it's very interesting. Like a vinyl, that's that's like for collectors and such. You know, so there
Yeah.
are a few people that are collecting like vinyls and like stuff like that. But I've never seen like a metal band that is doing like tapes of their latest release. So that's pretty interesting for me, though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we put most of our records out on tape, mostly just because it's just so cheap. It's really cheap, and it's like it's a nice way to have a like physical version of your record out. Because we hadn't had anybody, we'd been self-releasing everything up until this last record. And when you're doing that, the cost of pressing something to vinyl is just so daunting. So yeah, so pressing things to tape is just like, it's something super quick and super cheap. And it's like a nice thing just to like have out. And it's something that I think I've seen a lot of bands around like the US doing. So there's definitely like a culture of people who like, just buy cassette. I own cassettes and I don't even have a fucking cassette player. It's just like a cool little like a collectible thing to have, and it's a good way to like support a band. If you're like, hard strapped for cash, like usually people are selling cassettes for like $5 or whatever, and it's like, cool, yeah, I can do that. I'll happily, just have a little thing to remember this band by, even if I like, don't actually have a way to listen to it. But yeah, I don't know. And it's also like a very quick turnaround. So for us, especially earlier when I was just like churning records out a lot faster, it would take like 2 weeks to get tapes made. And I'd be like, okay, great, cool. Like that's super easy. Whereas it takes like multiple months to get a record pressed to vinyl. So yeah, it's just it's definitely more economic for smaller bands for sure.
Yeah, man. So what I'm asking myself is it easy for you guys to play like book shows with your style of music, like to go on tour, or is that nothing you're really interested in? Like, are you more of a quality over quantity kind of band if it comes up to playing live shows,
Yeah. I think there's definitely a sort of scene of bands kind of doing similar, stuff to what we are, just kind of darker, like whatever you want to call it, goth, dark wave, whatever. There's definitely a lot of bands in various cities doing that sort of thing. So it's fun to get to play with them. But yeah, I mean, we've toured a few times now. I think maybe three times. No, 4 times now. Jeez. It's always like a pretty mixed bag. But it's like a fun excuse to like get out and get on the road. I think like in terms of playing locally for us, in terms of like playing in New York or like even in Connecticut, because there's now more of us and because we're kind of spread out a little bit more, we have to be a little more decisive about what we do and don't play, because it's just like it has to work for everybody at this point, or it's like just not really worth doing. So I think we've definitely become a little more selective. There was definitely a point, I think, like around this time last year, I think we had like 4 or 5 shows in the month of October alone, and we just were like, yeah, that's too much. We can't do that. Yeah, and I think everybody has kind of gotten a little busier with a lot of various things. So we definitely started to be a little more selective about when and where we play, especially in New York. Like it's hard for like the members of the band who don't live in New York. It's hard for them to get down here for shows, and it's like hard for us to all get together and practice for those shows. So we try to be very intentional in that regard in terms of like what we play down here.
So basically, it's 4 tours, whole tours, and 7 outputs in just 5 years. Man, that's insane. I mean, I know you told me in advance, but could you tell the audience real quick how old you are again?
Yeah, I'm 25.
Dude, that's just nuts. I mean it. I mean, man, 25. So when did you start all of it? like 5 years ago, or you guys are a band for 5 years? You needed you started it earlier, right?
Yeah, so the name and sort of concept of the project, I think I came up with in like 2013, and then it took another like year or so, year and change to sort of get everything together for
Yeah.
that.
No, sorry. No,
Yeah.
as a live playing musician myself, I'm totally interested in what your tech writer might looks like. So, what do you guys need of equipment to recreate your sound on stage?
Yeah. So we have currently we run two synths. One is like a older Roland like string synthesizer. It only does string and organ sounds. And then we also run a like a Korg what is it? It's like the mini log, I think. Yeah, and it's like a just like a small analog synth that I can do a lot of stuff with. So we kind of pair the two of those for the synths, and then the drums come from, oh man, what is it called? It's a Roland R70, which
Yeah.
is sort of like a digital sampling drum machine from like the 90s. So basically, yeah, so it's that, and then so Shane has the two synths covered. I um like play and trigger the drums, as well as guitar and vocals, and then we have a bassist, and then Louis plays guitar. So yeah, we have a lot going on currently in terms of our live setup. It definitely used to be way more sparse, but yeah, as the project has grown, we've kind of needed to add a few more things, especially with doing a bunch of these recent songs. We've needed to add um, like that extra synth element to some of them for sure.
Okay, sounds like you need to think of a lot of things when you're heading out on tour, right?
Yes, definitely. Luckily, the last time we toured with a band that brought their own PA
Oh, that's
on tour,
good.
just because we were, yeah, just because we were playing a lot of basements and a lot of smaller venues and stuff. So, um, but yeah, no, it's definitely, we try to be as compact as possible when we go on tour, especially because we're playing, a number of, like basements or like DIY venues, and the sound is always a little iffy. So we want to like have as little room for error as possible there.
I just discovered that you guys signed a record deal with a small record company called Squirrel Records. So, how did you guys get in touch? Did they reach out to you, or were you guys promoting your records by that time?
Yeah, so they actually reached out to me, the guys. So Red Scroll are a record store in Connecticut, which is where I'm from. Definitely one of the best record stores in the state. They have a really, really great collection of stuff. I would go there a lot in like college, and once I started like properly collecting records, I went there and bought just like so many things. So yeah, they reached out to me, which was really cool. They had been, I think they started out as a label initially, just kind of releasing like kind of friends bands and stuff like that. And then the store kind of started taking off, so they needed to devote more time to that. But then yeah, recently they've started putting out a lot more records by bands from Connecticut, and I think like a few from like sort of Western Massachusetts. So yeah, they reached out to me, which was super cool. I was like just totally, I was stoked. It was,
They're
yeah.
doing all of your records, like all of your releases, or just like the
No,
new
just
ones?
this, yeah, just this most recent one. They hit me up about, which was really cool because it was a very very good timing, because I had just like, I was kind of in the stages of getting like the final mixes back, and then I was like, oh man, okay, what am I gonna do with this? I feel like I need to like properly put this out. And so yeah, and I'd kind of sent it around to a few folks, and just like a few other like smaller labels, and didn't really like have any luck there. So yeah, I was just super stoked when they reached out to me, and like, as you know, they're like very much like a pillar of like Connecticut music. So yeah,
so you've been promoting your latest record, like before, like you were looking for a record company to work with.
Yeah, I kind of had like rough mixes of, I had like a rough version of the record that I had been sending around to a few people, just to be like, hey, is this like something that you would be interested in? And yeah, it just like was nothing was really coming together. But yeah, so I got super lucky. Shout out to Red Scroll.
That's it. You guys in Red Squirrel Records did a good job, man. So I just saw that they're running an own podcast by themselves, right?
Yeah, they do a podcast. I was on that like I want to say around like the winter time. But yeah, no, they interview a bunch of bands and people from around Connecticut as well.
I need to check that out as soon as we're done here. So yeah, man, what are your plans for the future? I mean, for reduction plans. So what are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to do?
I think right now the main thing that we're trying to do is just like play in New York a little more and try to like, I don't know, just like build up a little more of a presence here, because it's been interesting trying to kind of like break into a new scene since like moving here. But and outside of that, just I would like to tour again for sure off of this new record. I'd like to try to find some way to make it over to like the West Coast of the US, because we've never done that before. And yeah, I don't know. Just want to play shows.
That's awesome, man. So yeah, dude, I would say we wrap this up. So, and as I told you in advance, I would like you to send me a song that is representative for your kind of music. So would you tell us something about this song, Repent, how you come up with the idea and what are the lyrics about and such for the audience?
Yeah. So this song I needed, in my head at least, when I was constructing sort of what I wanted everything on the record to be, I wanted like a faster song.
Yeah, right.
That was just like more fun to play live. So yeah, I came up with the drum pattern for this and then kind of wrote the guitar line over it. I would say in the most concise way that Repent is about just like letting things go and letting things out and kind of like, yeah, pretty much.
So is there like anything else you want to say to our audience before we are done here?
I don't know. Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be on my show. And it has been a real blast. So thank you so much. And I wish you and you guys all the best for the future. I hope you're getting way bigger than you are right now. So you guys deserve it.
Thanks.
All right, people. So here for you, Repent by Reduction Plan from New York. See you next time.
Into